What's happening? It's Mark T here, and I'm here with our second episode of the No Backboard Basketball League Social Club. And I'm filming today from my mom's house in Southern California, Riverside, IE. Shout out to all my hillside. And I'm joined today with two members of the Social Club Founders Councils and also a member of our No Backboard Basketball League street team. First and foremost, without any further ado, you've probably been seeing him on IG lately with his mellow hoodie, no backboard hoodie on, dropping jump shots. DJ Mustard, what's good, DJ Mustard?
How's it going? How's it going?
It's going well. And then we got the man, work hard, play hard, with the jerseys in the background, Richard Trip Smith. What's up? How you doing, Trip?
Hey, salute. I'm doing well, brother. Hello, brothers.
Yeah, what's good? What's good? So our first segment today is Basketball 55. The NBA celebrating 75 years of being in business. The No Backboard Basketball League is celebrating basketball's 130th birthday. And the Basketball 55 segment is all about highlighting the people, places, games, situations that took place prior to the founding of the NBA, those first 55 years that laid the foundation for the NBA to even exist, but more importantly, to reflect and bring back to people's memory a time when basketball really had a symbiotic relationship with basketball and Black and brown communities. So today, we want to introduce you to a guy named Harry Bucky Lew. Harry Bucky Lew is known as the first Black professional basketball player. And when you start learning about this guy, Harry Bucky Lew, like me and like many others who learned about it, it's amazing that we don't know more about Harry Bucky Lew. Harry Bucky Lew grew up in the Northeast, the New England area, and he started playing basketball at the YMCA with the employed boys of the YMCA in 1898. And what's interesting is this guy was a winner out the gate, because as a member of that YMCA team, he won 4 state championships. And then at the age of 18, he got recruited to play professional basketball. However, as the story goes, though he was on the team, the coach never wanted to play him. And it wasn't until there was a situation where they were playing in town, in his hometown. Everybody knew Harry Bucky Lew. They knew who he was. Everybody knew who he was. And a situation arose where the team, the all-white team, but Harry was down to 4 players. And the coach was willing to let Harry, the team, play 5-on-4 until the fans almost started a riot to support putting this Black man in the game, which I think is something to take note of there. And from there, he went in, and as he's quoted, he says, everything that you heard about Jackie Robinson, the abuse and beating that he had to take, he said that was true for him and even more. And you have to think, I believe this was almost 20 years before Jackie Robinson. So Harry Bucky Lew, what's also amazing about his story is after that, he went on, continued to play professional basketball on a few other teams. Then he ultimately start forming his own teams, and he started barnstorming around. So for the next 20 years, you have the first Black man in the United States to play professional basketball, who went on to run and operate his own teams and to barnstorm around the United States for the next 20 years, making an honest living playing basketball. What a story, what a thought.
Yes.
DJ Mustard, what'd you think about that, man? When you heard about Harry Bucky Lew and the first, did you realize that the first professional black basketball player was that early in basketball history?
No, and I actually never thought about it just until you kind of brought this concept up, and it kind of made me it sparked my interest and just wonder like, okay, let's dive into this and see what went down, and just the fact that based on the time he had there were issues, you know what I mean, just and what we had to get out of, just off skin color and all that. And that showed even in his coaching. So the fact that he was able to somehow navigate playing with all these players, he's a winning player, and all of the racism, I mean, I think he's definitely one of the strongest figures that I've heard of for sure.
Agreed. I mean, straight up racist. This was almost 50 years before civil rights. Easy,
Yep.
easy. What were some of your takeaways, Trip?
Oh man, like, there's a lot of takeaways from somebody like this when you're talking about, the significance and a lot of the things that you said from, him being the first player, in a certain time. We talking about the early 1900s, the rules of the game, the psychology behind it is what's the most interesting factor when we're talking about all the elements that somebody like him was up against, even 20 years prior to Jackie Robinson. So just as a fan of the game, it really caught my interest to, read more and dig more into who Harry was, and, seeing some of his family involvements with being civil rights activists, people who were highly involved in
his family
the Underground Railroad.
was off the charts.
Yeah, you talking about grandparents who were at the forefront. Like their house was used as one of the bases when they were getting people out on the Underground Railroad. So it was so when you think about those type of cultural significances that he played in, that played a role in his life, it would just, it makes you ask questions on, kind of why it wasn't shine more light on, who he was and his involvement with us as people with the connection with basketball. Yeah, man, it was a lot. It's a lot to take away, a lot I feel like to talk about. And I learned a lot on the journey, and I look forward to talk about it, going deeper into not just the psychology, like I said, but the rules of the game. Something, DJ Mustard's touched on as far as the elements of the game. Y'all know, nets hanging from the roof, fences around the court, the court. Yeah, some of the concepts.
Let's come back to that, because you brought up something I don't want us to overlook, because I think this is key, particularly as Black men on this panel here and thinking about the importance of family. I think it was because he had that lineage in his family. He was third generation. He had grandparents that were involved with the Underground Railroad. His parents were successful, free, progressive Black people. I believe that laid the foundation to have the character, the strength to be the first, to endure what he endured, and then to be an entrepreneur in basketball at the outset when you started to have, he predates what we'll learn about the Harlem Globetrotters, not necessarily Harlem Globetrotters, more like the Harlem Wrens, the Lindy Big Five, and all these other teams of the Black Five era, where you had Black-owned teams that were barnstorming. They really didn't have leagues, but they barnstormed and they went around, and that jumped out to me. Is the connection I made is because he had these role models of Black people being successful in society at that time. That gave him the confidence and the courage and knowing that, and also the skills, the nuance on how to navigate those tough situations to be able to be successful. You got to think, he was a Black basketball franchise owner in the early 1900s. Right? You know, DJ, why were you tripping off nets hanging from the roof?
Well, like I said before, it's just a visual thing. Like, so what I'm wondering is it really? First of all, how did they hang them up? Because we have different technology now, so it's like, what were they using? Like, were people holding them? Like, what's the deal here? And I just think like just having a net and like not some sort of like solid foundation to like shoot a ball in, like I think the level of difficulty is probably more difficult than it is today. Obviously the rules are a little different, but
a little.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit.
Trip was tripping off like double dribble. Remember Trip was talking about the double
oh,
dribble
yeah,
being
man. Like,
legal.
so one of the references that a quote from one of his former teammates was, they considered him to be one of the best double dribblers at the time. And for them to make a reference about that goes back to that visual that, Mustard spelling, like somebody catching a ball, you the professional basketball player, and double dribbling is your profession. That's what you good at. Like the culture, like today's man, like I feel like just the transformation of the game is a topic in itself. It's a topic in itself. Yeah. Like, and I feel like when we get into like who Harry was and his involvement, I think it just sometimes it leads away from the game and into the psychology behind the game. And I feel like the psychology, like you say, not if you didn't have that type of leadership in front of you, who knows how he would have reacted being thrown in those situations where you constantly have all these underlying pressures going against you. So, yeah, man, the more info I found out about him, it was like, just the psychology behind how people were treated and how we viewed ourselves in a way, and what we were fighting for in that time in the 1900s. It don't seem like that far away when you talk about the problems he was dealing with, because some of those same problems exist today. So it's like, it's not far. We still not far from that. But yeah, man, like it's an incredible story, man. It's so many different layers, and the rules of the game is another thing, right? Like we talking about no foul calls, like that in itself.
No foul calls, no out of bounds, no. They had double dribble, but no the dribbling the way we understand it. And I found it interesting that now to tell you guys, I was sharing this with DJ Mustard. When the concept of no backboard basketball came to my awareness, I was not aware that the game was invented without a backboard. I learned that as I started to embrace this vision. So for Harry Bucky Lew to be the first, Harry Bucky Lew is the first African-American to be a professional basketball player. That's been acknowledged. And he's quoted as saying, when he was playing, they played without a backboard. So the first African-American to play professional basketball in the United States played professional basketball with the game of basketball where the backboard wasn't present. Bam.
Yes.
Yes. And to your point is very astute. The same type of racial and social pressures he was experiencing in the 1890s and the beginning of the 1900s are the still social type of pressures and racial pressures that we're experiencing today, which is why I'm so encouraged to say, stop barking up the same tree. If we want to do something different in sports, then let's do something different in sports. And that's why it's the modern interpretation of the original game. It's that modern interpretation of the original game. What I also found is interesting is that Harry, he talks about his children have been interviewed, right? And to your point, and I think this is very astute, Trip, because you're like, hey, this is someone I think as a young passionate man about basketball, I should know about this guy already. It shouldn't take coming through this process to know about Harry Bucky Lew. He was a very quiet guy, but his many of times he talked to his children about how his experience on the basketball court and his experience and that toughness playing basketball, how that helped him to navigate through tough times in life. And when he needed to encourage his children and have those hard conversations with them about life, he oftentimes would reference his basketball experience, both on and off the court, to help them understand, what's required. What we want to accomplish with this is, when we do these segments, these basketball 15 segments, is we want to introduce people, events, situations, accomplishments that really inspire people to take another 10 to 15 minutes and just Google Harry Bucky Lew. Watch a couple of videos on him. And what you're going to find is not just this basketball guy, but you're going to get an understanding of the era and the game and the culture of that time, and how all of that still is relevant in 2022. What final thoughts you have on Bucky Lew, Trip?
Oh man, I want to read a quote from how he described part of playing, right? I want to read this quote. All right. And I think it kind of gives a visual and asks so many questions about the game, like we're speaking on. So it goes, of course, we had no backboards in those days, and everything had to go in clean. Naturally, there was no rebounding, and after a shot, there was a brawl to get the ball. There were no out-of-bound markers. We had a fence around the court, nets hanging off the ceilings, and balls were always in play. And you were guarded from the moment you touched it. Hardly had time to breathe, let alone think about what you were going to do with the ball. Like, so that says so much. Like, with
when you see that,
let alone being able to think about what to do with the ball, that literally gives you a visual of them catching the ball and like the first person to go bounce it and pick it up, bounce it and pick it up, bounce it and pick it up. What? Right. Oh my gosh. Like the fighting, the brawl, the physicality, like he said, there were no fouls. So when a rebound goes, it turns into rugby. It almost turns into rugby where it's just this physical, who's going to get the ball, like just to visualize that. And I'm already like a defender. I kind of seen the game from a physical standpoint. So to see people playing like that in that time, oh man, that quote just brought so many visuals of the game, like in that time, man. Like it's just significant, man. I think it's real significant to listen to some of the things that, these people who started some of these process for us, what they went through, what they say, how they felt about those situations. I believe it's very influential to today's game.
And what I see with that is pressure, 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 pressure. You know what I'm saying? When you're talking about like you catch, I'm visualizing, I'm catching the ball and this guy is right up on me. And what's good homework for everybody is the closest thing to the original game of basketball is netball. Watch some netball video. Oftentimes people confuse when they see basketball, the remix through the No Backboard Basketball League platform. They're like, oh, that's netball. It's not netball. But you should watch netball because there's no dribbling in netball. They play without a backboard. You only can hold the ball for 3 seconds. They have restricted areas of player movement like hockey and soccer and some of these other sports. So the game we have today is not the game we've always had. And that's why I think it's interesting on how what's the word? How diligently, if you would, or how strongly people hold on to the concept of playing with a backboard. The game was never started with the backboard. And the game we have today is not the game that was even 20 years ago. Right? The 3-point line came in when I was my first year in college was the 3-point line introduced in NCAA. So that thing's only like 30 years. My point being is everything evolves. Cool. Hey, basketball 55 will be right back at you. What we're going to do right now is we have some video that we took last month doing our first beta event. I've watched a lot of it. I'm not sure how much you guys have watched of it, but we want to use this opportunity, man, to give you guys opportunity to ask any additional questions you may have about the game as I point some things out. Like, so that technically what just happened there, that's technically an out of bounds. You got to remember the officials were learning the game themselves, right? What did you find as because DJ Mustard, you probably have more time on the hoops than anybody, but this also was your first time playing full court. What did you find different playing full court compared to kind of some of the half court?
So full court, yeah, there's definitely less time to think. So, with it being my first time, I guess I would say the most difficult part about it was just trying to remember the rules and kind of run and play at the same time. You know what I mean? Just because like it was our first time, and so there was a lot of stoppage just because like you're looking, you're like, well, is it out? Like, do we keep playing? So the biggest thing is the loose balls and full court. So yeah, that's the biggest change that I've seen from playing half court to full court is like just realizing like can I play on it? Is it off him? Like,
right.
So I would say that would be the biggest challenge in the transition from half court to full court.
And I think that's just going to come down more to having a group of officials that really understand the rules. Because ultimately, just like with youth basketball, you see, if you have good officials in youth basketball, those officials are teaching the game to the kids as they are also officiating. Right. So I think a lot of that came down to the officials. That's being their first time as well. Did you find it more difficult picking up the basket in full court or locking in on the basket? Say like a play like this. You know, you're catching the ball, you're moving, and you're attacking the basket. Because I noticed a lot of guys early on, man, have missed a lot of layups by themselves.
Yes, man. One of the things that I like, so for me, one of the things that I think of when I first was in it, as I was examining the game on the half court, just the first thing you think is like, yo, what is this? Like, what is this? What's going on? What am I going to do here? No backboard, because I mean the psychology, like I say, behind, you know, just looking at a rim without a backboard is like, okay, so how am I gonna get that in there? Right? Like, so how am I going to do that? So, and then when you start to realize like the challenges, overcoming, like we were talking about with Harry, the pressures, I believe this whole concept and even with the full court was the pressure. You could see the players, okay, the pressure and skill. Those are the two things that I feel like show the most when I watch the games, right? Players walking into a situation where you have limited access to information on what it is the rules to the game are, how, and that's where the skill comes in, right? Like, are they able to still do what they're able to do under these different pressures of the one thing that I was confused about the most in the full court was just playing the out of bounds ball. Knowing when, he said, not only who it was off of, but when it's actually considered out. How far can you go to save a ball for your team? Like, that was the one thing that kind of stood out, you know, to me as far as like, yo, how do we handle this?
So on that point, here is the rule. Here's the rule, the out of bounds rule. 1, it's the placement of the ball, not the player. So we're watching the ball. 2, if the ball, that's out of bounds. If the ball bounces completely out of bounds, it's out. And you can see it all through the demo game that was missed.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, it was.
Because half of these out of bounds where guys kept playing, it should have been a turnover. That's out. That's out. Right. That was out of bounds.
Yeah. So yeah, he didn't.
Once
even,
the ball touches out, but if it bounces in and it goes out, it's like you could go run, catch it, and save it. You might even be able to take the one step to throw it in and save it, but you only get the one step.
And I look forward to that because same skills, new challenges, right? You got the same skills. You're using all your same skills, but now they're presented with a different challenge. Right. Because like, for example, if you look at that, right, that scenario right there, I wonder if, let me take it back. I wonder if you had a backboard, because I know you have handles, right? This right here, he's going to pass it up to you. Like, I think normally you're attacking the rim on that.
Yeah.
I think normally you're attacking the rim on that. Right. But because you know there's a degree of difficulty there and you're going to meet some resistance and you don't have the backboard to kind of play off of, you pulled it up and you made a read.
Right. Correct. I would have, with that. And that's the thing, right? That not seeing that security blanket there, it'll make you the second guess some things when you look over and that security ain't there to help protect you in a way. So, that's that guard dog, right? And I feel like that's what a lot, like you said, with people were missing layups, like they don't see their guard dog there. They don't see that level of bailout. The bailout ain't there. So you got to be able to put it in the rim. You got to be accurate. You know what I'm saying? You got to be accurate. And when you're moving fast, that's like the pressure we talk about. So many people are under pressure because it's like almost like, okay, what are we doing? How do we do this? When really it's just trust your skill. Trust your skill, trust your knowledge, and stick to the basics. Because you stick to the basics, I don't care what the rules are, there's going to be success there.
But here's the thing. One of the basics of good basketball is if it's not your shot, you pass the ball. And this really forces that principle. Because I wasn't even thinking about this, but one of the feedback that several of the guys who played in, that was a great pass right there. Several guys who played in the
oh my gosh.
I don't know what happened after the pass.
That was a great
They're
pass.
going to say you fouled him, but that's unfortunate. That's
that was.
But that ball's moving more in this situation. Without the backboard, that ball's being shared more.
Yes.
Yeah. See,
that's what it does. It really exposes like the security, but how people like it exposes like a basketball insecurity in a way, like like certain players who just like don't have that, like it'll really like, because you got to be accurate, man, and you can't just think. I mean, you can think fast, but you have to think. You're gonna have to think right there, right? Like you go up, I think it's easy. If there's a backboard there, that goes in. But just because of the release and everything was just off right there without that security blanket, like I threw that one damn near over the rim.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. Hey, so what was your thought playing with the 3-point key?
Well, you talking about as far as the paint, right? The paint area, that's 3 points.
Yeah.
So to me, it's golden because I'm still kind of like an old school mid-range game. I trust in the mid-range game, and I believe in the half-court offense still. So when you're talking about the half-court offense, I feel like, once again, it brings some power back to the paint because we've lost so much power with the paint with everybody wanting to be guard or shoot the three. I feel like it's kind of lost paint, but this gives some power back to it while still respecting the shooters who get your 3 points for having your problem. But now you got to come down here and stop me from getting 3 too.
I like that. It brings power back to the paint. And for someone like you, DJ Mustard, it seems because you shoot and you go to the rim and you've had some success around the rim without the no backboard.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel like it brings more diversity to your game? So prior to this, did you attack the rim like you attack it, like I've seen you with the no backboard?
I'm gonna say that yeah, when I play with no backboard, I do go to the basket normally, but in this scenario, it's almost like 80-20, you know what I mean? Like I go to the basket way more in this league, definitely, versus a traditional basketball, just because you know, it really should be very similar, but you know, without the visual of the backboard, it just kind of makes you think a little bit, and it's just enough to where it's like, all right, maybe this isn't such a good shot. And then it's like, you know, just like Tripp said, with the benefits of you know, 3-pointer in the key, like, yo, if I have somebody smaller than me, like, I'm not gonna, you know, psych myself out about this 3-pointer. Like, I'm gonna go to the basket.
Right.
I might get a foul call. And
Right.
and to tap on what he said, it's definitely more incentivized because I can either go and get a 3-pointer or a foul call. So
Right.
I mean, for me, I'm going to the basket. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer. It's I mean, it's not easy by any means, you know what I mean? But with a smaller rim, but still, it definitely incentivizes the paint, just like you said. Yep.
Yes, yes. And that's, you know, and that's been pretty exciting to see that because and I think Tripp, you really, some of the comments you made when you came down to the Crop Center for the demonstrations about playing around the paint, right? Playing around the paint is this really gives regardless of your skill set, your strengths or weaknesses, you can find your lane with this and still be rewarded. Excuse me.
Yep.
And still be rewarded for a big can play in this and get rewarded correctly, as well as a straight shooter and someone in between, you know, all the way around. This is a good shot. Oh, missed everything though.
Right. And that's the thing with a backboard there, you never know. It might have looked a little better, but it's like you can't take it and just pull it as quick. I mean, respect, if you're a shooter and you can still hit on that rim, then you're going to be able, and you still get that love. You're still a threat. It still keeps the threat there. Like, I just think, once again, it complements the paint, which brings back a complete love of the game. Another way to respect and play the game and how it originally started.
I like that. That's good stuff.
And that small rim, man, you know, that small rim, I'll tell you, that's another thing you don't think about on layups, right? You don't think about like, yo, it's not the last minute. Big, you're like, oh, it's smaller too.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
in addition to no backboard, it's much smaller as well. That's right. That's right.
That definitely throws it off. Like, even a floater, it changes people who have, if you think that floater, you're going to get bailed out. You got to be a little bit more accurate. So it's like the training, the mental and physical, the psychology training behind what you're doing and not even realizing you're doing it. Sometimes I feel like it can be more valuable than even what you think you doing, right? Like those challenges we talk about, like just look at the game. Like, it's a challenge. People are out there not only challenged by the environment in the game, but they challenged by themselves and what their skill set is.
Yeah.
And you nailed it right there, Tripp, in that subconsciously you are actually getting a better training experience. This is the most powerful passive basketball training platform ever. Because simply by coming out here and playing, you are improving. You're improving your accuracy on your shot. You're improving your IQ because you're becoming sensitive to what's a good shot, what's not a good shot. Then when you're shooting, you're more intent. You notice cats are really following through. They're really lining up. You're passing the ball more. And you're playing at a pace and you're putting a stress on your skill set that fundamentally demands more of you. Traditional basketball, that when you go back and play traditional basketball, the game is easier. And that taps into the fundamental principle that every single super athlete has stated. Train harder than you have to play.
Yep.
So when you put yourself in training situations that require more of your skill, IQ, conditioning, etc., automatically you're going to play better when you go back to traditional basketball.
Yep. It's going to feel so much more easier. It's like, what? I done been against way more difficult odds than this. This easy now, in a way. Like,
go,
right?
Man.
Like, yeah, man.
That's
yeah,
it.
so it's
That's
so
it.
yeah, man. Just like even with the game like that. That's why I'm really appreciative to be able to watch the mistakes or watch the thought process behind the challenge being approached, right? Like as we watching the games, even watching myself, like you say, you see how people are passing more. You see how people are second guessing open layups. You see how people are like just all the little things that some people wouldn't think that you're traditionally going to just get out there and work on. You automatically are challenged against that the moment you step out there and start playing or shooting on those rims.
It's interesting. LT says this is going to get the fat out of people's games, right? All that extra, all that extra stuff people have in their games, like that typically gets you in trouble. It's like you play this, it's going to get the fat out your game. You know, this is what you, and that's the vision of it, right? The vision of it is that we have a facility that's convenient enough that cats can get in there a couple of times a week and supplement their basketball training in this immersive, no backboard environment, and then see that improve their basketball game. That's what we're looking for to do. That's what's up. Cool. All righty.
Another one of the excitements in watching people, I think people kind of embrace the hockey sub idea, right? Where you could just kind of go stand on the baseline, wait until your next offensive possession, and be able to just come in rather than coach telling or somebody telling you to go sub in or go sit at the bench. You down there on the baseline, just waiting to take off. Like I think that's one of the fun things, like the low underlining fun parts about like just the approach to the games. I think people were having fun checking in on that baseline like that.
Yeah, I like that as well.
Like when I'm gonna just do this full sprint, I'm gonna just Randy Moss it down the side. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Put some pressure on the defense real quick.